2009 Volkswagen Jetta. Today we're going to be knocking out the CV axles. Front lug nuts are 17 millimeters. Or lug bolts, I mean. Alright, so most of the time this CV axle bolt right here is a 30 millimeter. So I'm assuming that these are aftermarket because this one requires a 24 millimeter 12-point socket. Go ahead and thread that bolt back in a couple of turns. And use it to push that CV axle out of the steering knuckle. Especially if it's the first time it's ever been done, it'll probably be seized up in there pretty good. Now, one of my favorite parts about working on the Volkswagen vehicles is that most of them have the unboltable lower ball joints, which are held on by these three 16 millimeter bolts, well, nuts, and then the bolts are actually studs that are pressed in to the lower ball joint. So you just need to remove those three nuts, and it makes the job a lot easier. Our CV axle is pretty seized inside of there, so I'm actually just going to get myself a 12-inch, half-inch extension. I'm going to put it in there and smack it with a hammer. I've got one of these. Well, I've got a lot of these, but I always keep one around just for things like this. There's already mushroomed and stuff like that, so I'm not too worried about damaging it. There goes the CV axle. CV axle has been disconnected from the steering knuckle now. We can go underneath and see where it is connected to the transmission. Try to get a good camera angle on this. Make sure you've got yourself a catch can ready, because some vehicles, and I personally never know which ones, some of them will leak transmission fluid when removing the CV axles. Some don't, but I always like to have a catch can just to be safe so I'm not cleaning up a mess later. Alright, so that CV axle was fighting me a little bit, but I just used a suspension fork like this, put it there and hammered up on it until I was able to break it loose. The CV axle out, we can go ahead and push the steering knuckle out of the way and remove the full CV axle, like so. Installing the new CV axle is pretty straightforward. Get it lined up inside the transmission. So you can see right here, it is lined up inside of the transmission. And with the bolt on the head of the new CV axle, we're just gonna press in on it and give it a few taps. and you'll hear the sound change once it bottoms out against that transmission. Like so. And there you have it. Your new CV axle is mated up to the transmission. And go ahead. Remove your new bolt, which is a standard bolt, which is nice compared to those 12-point bolts. You see right there. All right, once you get that lined up, it'll slide in. Get your new bolt and slide that into the CV axle. Don't impact it down right now because you don't want to have to fight all these different things when you're putting the lower ball joint back together. Now we're going to go ahead and do exactly that. Line that up. Put your 3 bolts back on. And go ahead and tighten everything back up. That's pretty much it. Not the most difficult job except for removing it from the transmission. I don't know why that is. Volkswagens of this year seem to have that issue where they're really difficult to remove from the transmission. I guess they put oversized C-clips in there to lock them in. But other than that, it wasn't really difficult. Probably took me about 15 minutes. And that's pretty much it. Bolt everything back up in the reverse order we took it apart, and you're golden. This video helped you out, leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next time.